Welcome to The Soul Space, the podcast that inspires you to discover your truth, ignite your passion, and align your life with the power of who you really are. I'm Georgia Rose, psychic astrologer. I share the cosmic roadmap that guided me through astrology, tarot, and inner knowing into authentic living. I'm here to help you decode your soul's cosmic story, reconnect with your passion, and create the life you are meant to live. It all starts within, and it all starts now in the soul space. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the soul space. I am back. This is the second episode of our new season. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're all finding me on YouTube. We're no longer streaming live on social media, Facebook or Instagram or any of those. But if you missed the live show, you know you can always find me on all podcast platforms, Spotify, and we actually are on Roku. You just got to set up the channel and you can watch me everywhere. I'm everywhere. So welcome. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to get into the soul space. Hey, everybody. And tonight we are going to be talking about heaven and what heaven is to us and how to rediscover our joy. And the reason why I chose that program tonight is because I feel like everything got very heavy in the world. We've been undergoing a lot of transits and a lot of things that have been really challenging us. And I think sometimes we start to grieve a lot. A lot of the last few shows that I've done have been about releasing and grieving. And we really want to make sure that we are still staying in some kind of joy. And we need that good, positive energy to help us manifest. So Rogue is on. Hey, Rogue, how are you doing? First thing I'm going to do tonight, before we get to our cosmic comedy, which we like to do, is something I usually don't do on the show, but I'm going to do tonight. I want you guys, everyone out there watching, and everyone, no matter if you're watching live or if you're going to watch the replay of the show, send some beautiful, loving vibes to a very special group of friends of mine in my astrology group. Rogue is one of them. She's on tonight. And my other very, very good friend, Delia, who we've had on the show, is out there. If you could just send her some really beautiful vibes and also send some to me. My birthday is this Sunday. And so going to have another trip around the sun. Let's make sure that's a good one. So I'm sending all my love out to everyone tonight. And I hope you will send us some of your really great, sparkly, pixie dust. So if you see my hair blowing around the studio, it's because we have fans, because that's just what we do here. So I'm going to go right into our cosmic comedy because we need a good laugh after the last few days of this full moon in Aries. So take it away, Bobby, with our cosmic comedy. It's time for cosmic comedy, where Mercury retrograde is the main character, the lunations are loony, and the stars are a punchline.
Matt, I'm dating an Aries, which means she's a natural-born leader.
I can also be hot-headed. Let me see your phone.
No.
Let me see your phone!
Okay.
You're dating astrology girls now. That's not annoying at all.
Matt, I'm dating a Taurus now, which means she enjoys luxury.
I'm also quite stubborn.
Babe, can you take off your shoes in our apartment?
No, I refuse!
This is getting weird.
Matt, I'm dating a Gemini now, which means she's a quick learner.
I'm also two-faced. By the way, I'm cheating on you.
You need to stop dating girls based on their zodiac signs.
Matt, I'm dating a Cancer now, which means she's empathetic.
But I can also be emotional.
Stop dating these girls! They're crazy!
Matt, I'm dating a Leo now, which means she's charismatic.
I'm also self-centered. You better go like and comment my new Instagram post.
Stop with the zodiac signs!
Matt, I'm dating a Virgo now, which means she's detail-oriented.
But I'm also a perfectionist. Oh my god. Your hair, it looks awful.
None of this is real! Stop with the zodiac signs!
Matt, I'm done dating girls based on zodiac signs. None of it's real.
Oh my god, you sound like such a Gemini.
There you go. Hope you waited for it. So we have a lot of Gemini energy in right now, too. We've got a lot of Gemini energy. We've got Uranus and Gemini, but not for long. It's headed back to Taurus. And when it goes back to Taurus, expect a little bit of replay in your life from the last 6 years. But it'll be good because this time you're much older and much wiser. So let's jump right in to where's your heaven? What's your heaven? What do you do for joy? How do we rediscover our joy? So I thought a lot about this show, as I usually do, but it's becoming a little more pensive in this full moon in Aries. It's actually a lot of Scorpio energy as well. Mars and Mercury in Scorpio. Mercury just went there today. So today is a day of the things that we've been thinking about. All of a sudden we woke up and we realized I've been thinking about that. And Aries energy is making us move it all forward. So I thought a little more about the show, which I always think about. And I woke up and I said, wow, I'm really thinking about this show tonight. And what I thought about was rediscovering our joy. And even with myself, I know lately I've lost some of my joy. I started to watch media a lot. I started to listen to people who maybe are a little more negative than I am. I started to really get lost a little bit in what's going on in the external world, and it started to drag me down. So I had to ask myself, is this all my energy or does it belong to someone else? And I think that's the first thing when we start to become a little bit heavy or we start to feel sad or we start to really get into this negativity where we're joining those negative conversations. I think what happens is we forget to listen to our solo voice, our inner voice, our soul space. And unless we take those natural pauses and we reflect on that, we talked a lot about that in the last show about just contemplation and how important it is to take that pause and the power of the pause. We're going to be talking about that next time too. But unless we do that, we get really caught up in those external voices. And so it's really important for us to be the one that we feel that determines how we live. Because when we get disconnected to that, we get disconnected to our joy. When we're on the path to discovering ourselves and finding our soul space, our authenticity, it's really important to always be asking ourselves, how does this feel? Is this right for me? And discovering what that feels like in our body. And I remember when I was first seeing someone who was a grief therapist, and she was also a psychic medium. And she was a really amazing woman, Adrienne DeSalvo, her name is. And I remember one of the first things she told me was, you have to, every day when you wake up, just do a body scan and start like with your toes and go all the way up your body and think of the sensation, how you feel everywhere. And you'll start to feel your body and really understand how your body responds to things. And it's really important to do that and know those responses because that's when we know we have joy. Joy is an emotion we feel, right? It's almost sometimes hard to describe. You may take externals like Christmas morning or the birth of a baby or you won an award or you had a success or something that really made you feel good, right? What did feeling good feel like? But when you really think about it, sometimes our greatest joys are the simple things. Like, when was the last time you had a vanilla ice cream cone and let it drip down your chin? Or you just went out and gardened and didn't care about your clothes and got really down in the dirt? Or just, felt life? Because that's where our joy is. I remember when I had a really stressful position at the company I worked for before this one, and I would come home every day and get on the floor and play with my dog because that's where I felt joy. And I needed that 10 minutes with Sparky, 15 minutes with Sparky, just to renew my body, my mind, my spirit. So I think when we're trying to rediscover our joy, sometimes we don't have to change our whole life, throw out our whole wardrobe, lose 50 pounds. Sometimes we just need to breathe fresh air. We just need to go out in the sun. So there's a lot of really small things we can do. I remember when I was in great loss in my life and, at times was really struggling with wanting to go on. And I remember one of my favorite things to do was just lay in the sun. And where I live here in the Northeast, there's a big lighthouse and beautiful ocean beach. And I remember I used to always jog or run or walk the path to the lighthouse. And when I got there, this beautiful lighthouse was surrounded by this foundation and pavement that was all done with granite. And I used to lay on the granite and just let the sun bake me. And I did that all throughout the year. I didn't care if it was winter, if it was spring, if it was summer. And I remember just lying there and letting light come into my body and feeling joy that way. And that was one of the slow ways I rediscovered joy. I remember another time when I was really in a very, very bad place in my life as far as grief, really into deep, deep compound grief, had suffered tremendous losses. And I remember eating breakfast one day at the kitchen table and just feeling like, somebody had just turned out the lights in the world. Like there was just, everything went dark. And I remember my dog who I had just gotten came in, Sparky, and he brushed against my leg. I felt his fur on my leg and it brought me back to life. And so that helped me rediscover what it felt like to feel that little bit of joy bubble up in me. And I think because of all the things that have been happening in the world, and even the last 5 years, like beginning with COVID, I think a lot of us have heaviness, and we've had some really heavy transits astrologically too. And we've had cleansings and karmic things happen. And I think we need to get back to that joy. So think about what is joyful to you. Where have you found joy in the past? Because sometimes when we're stuck or we're bored or we're disconnected, it's almost like we can't quite reach joy anymore. And that's because now we've conditioned ourselves in the negative. We've conditioned ourselves in an area where we forgot what joy's like. And it's easier to do that than we think. So I'm going to welcome a few people from tonight. You guys all bring me joy. So welcome Rogue and Sarah and Nancy. I see Trisha's on here and everybody else at home that maybe has not said hi, but I can't see you. I'm glad you're watching. So let's start to rediscover our joy. Let's do this together a little bit tonight and see if we can't awaken something in us to feel lighter, because I am just going to send beautiful violet light and positive energy out to all of you. So let's all just close our eyes for a moment, because even if there's not a lot of people watching live tonight, which there probably is more than I know, if we can just muster up some energy, that energy will attach itself to this time period. And when someone watches the video on replay, they'll feel this, I promise you. So let's just close our eyes for a moment. And everyone just think of a time when you felt completely alive. Like you just felt like your body was electrified. There was joy just bubbling up from that root chakra all the way up to your heart, and throat bubbling up, joy, just smile on your face. And just think about that beautiful feeling of joy. And just let it just grace you. Let it run through your blood and your bones and your cells. And you may find yourself touched or crying or emotional, but just let it come through you. And maybe smile at your heart a little bit and just be grateful for that moment, the moment that you're feeling right now. And just, before you tuck it away in your heart, that it's there always to draw on, just sprinkle a little bit out into the universe for all of us. And just send a little of that pixie dust out. And then bring it back in and let it be in your heart like a little light that you can just pull out anytime. That is indestructible, that joy. It is your mojo, your motivation, your love, your life force. And just allow yourself to have that. And I'd be interested in the comments if anybody wants to put what they conjured up. Because for me, it was just kind of walking on one of my favorite paths in the local arboretum. Yeah. So why do we lose our joy? Well, like I just said, we get really caught up in the external world. We get really caught up in the things that we hear and we listen to and we take in. I recently have a friend who their demeanor has completely changed and they seem almost like a different person because they're really happy and more calm. And I said to them the other day, what's really the change in you? Like what happened? And they said, well, Georgia, I stopped watching a lot of media. And I said, wow, that's how much effect it had on you. They were angrier, and once they stopped watching, they got a lot happier. So now that you know what that feeling feels like, I'm going to ask you to maybe during the show or afterwards, just think about this in your free moments, maybe before you fall asleep or when you wake up in the morning. Ask yourself why that feeling was buried. What's it buried under? Where did you lose it? Because what happens is sometimes, like I said, life just comes in, like my friend who stopped listening to media and found his joy again. I remember a few years ago, back 2014, 15, 16, I had done a life group. I used to have a life group that met in my home, and it was a group of women, and we were all facing challenges of one kind or another. And we used to meet once a month. And it was a beautiful group. And I remember one day one of the girls came in and she was very, very sad and struggling. And after the group, she stayed after and she confided in me and she said, I'm really not in a good place. I'm having really bad thoughts. And I said to her, well, what's something that you used to like to do? Like when you were a child, what brought you joy? What was your favorite thing to do as a child? Rogue said sex this afternoon. I love you, Rogue. Now I have a visual in the comments. So funny. I love you. Um, so I said to her, like, what did you used to do when you were a kid? That, that feeling of abandoned lightheartedness. And she said, I used to ride a bike. I said, well, tomorrow, instead of, thinking about being unalive, tomorrow, go buy a bike. So the next month she came in. There's a true story, I swear to God. So the next month she came in. And for a while after that day, I was calling her like every afternoon. I'd be like, are you okay? Are you okay? And finally, after like the fifth day, she said, George, you don't need to call me every day. And I was like, all right. So a month later, she comes into the life group and she was like smiling and lighter. And I could tell her energy was happy. I said, what happened? What did you do? You're so different. She goes, I took your advice and I bought a bike and I've been bike riding every day and it's the best feeling in the world. So sometimes it just can be a little thing, right? Be joyful. So her joy was, underneath what was happening in her life in the current moment. She was so entrenched in that. It was a breakup that it was just stealing her life force. But once she reminded herself and her soul what joy felt like, she started to slowly come back. So my question for all of you is, what is burying your joy? Has it been a relationship? Has it been an experience you had as a child? Has it been something that you've gone through that recently or a long time ago? But whatever it is, maybe it's not yours. When we are empathic, and I know a lot of you that watch have empathic ability, or you feel like you can feel energy around you, which is the truth. You react to energy. Energy, makes itself known to you, even not consciously. When we are those type of souls and we're open that way, sometimes we take on other people's things. And it doesn't mean that we have to take on like things from our parents and all that stuff. It could even be you have a child who's struggling in school and now you're taking on that karma and that energy. Or maybe you are just, reliving something from childhood, or maybe you have a good friend and every time they call you, it's just complain, complain, complain. And now your joy is getting buried in that. So it's really important to understand why we lose joy so that we're on the alert for it not happening again. So Rogue says, and how close, deep. I can't read that. Wait. Yeah. So what Rogue is saying is sometimes when you have that connection and you have that joy, sometimes you can feel when it's going to ebb away if you miss someone. Or I think I know what you're talking about. Like sometimes I have separation anxiety with certain people, In our group, Rogue, I always get a little pang of separation anxiety whenever we're ready to end the Zooms. But, I'm just being lighthearted, but it can be really deep, once you've had a connection with someone, if you're used to being by yourself a lot and you're lonely, and then you have a deep connection and then that person goes away, you can really feel that, so it's important in those moments to take care of yourself and bring yourself joy in some way, play a music that you love, dance, get energy moving. We have to move that heavy energy. So our joy gets buried under pain, under responsibility, and also under the emotional assignments that we didn't sign up for. Like, of course, we're going to feel badly if we have a child who's not doing good in school or they're getting bullied or something's bothering the child. Of course, we're going to feel pain. We're going to feel empathy for that. But that soul contract is not ours, it's the child's. So we have to stay in our own joy when we can and in our own strength so that we are full potential to help that person without getting entangled. And I know that's hard, mother-child relationship, child-mother relationship, all those things, but it doesn't mean that we are going to allow their assignments to completely steal our joy. Being empathic and giving empathy to someone is one thing, but closing down our capacity for life and joy and to be able to feel, those good emotions, that's really not what our soul came here to do at all. Sometimes we carry grief that isn't ours. I did that. As a child, my mother was a very sad person. Looking back now with the knowledge and the wisdom that I have, I suspect strongly that she was clinically depressed for many, many years. There was a history there that was very deep. And when I was a small child, my mom was in bed a lot. She would be sleeping or in bed a lot, just sad. She would always use the expression, I feel blue. It's just blue. I'm blue. And, in order to bond with a parent who really wasn't emotionally there, I used to climb into bed with my mom and pretend I was sad. I would do this very, very young. I mean, I can remember it being one of my first memories at 4 or 5 years old. And so, children are supposed to be having fun and playing and being lighthearted. And I buried my childhood joy in my mother's sadness just to connect with her. So, and for someone like me who's an empath, that's huge. That is, my brain was wired on sadness. So in my life, I've really had to come very far to be able to experience joy and to trust joy. And the only way I can trust joy without thinking it's fleeting and the other shoe's going to drop and something's going to happen, the only way that I have found to be able to trust joy, and it's still a work in progress many times, is that I take control of it myself. And I always remind myself what being joyful is. And sometimes it's going to sound funny, but I just had a heartbreak with a very good friend of mine who I thought was going to be moving closer to me, and they can't. And it was a real heartbreak, but I the way I coped with it was I went to the bookstore, where I hadn't been for years, and I brought myself a new box of tarot cards, and I bought a book that I didn't read about certain things and with psychic stuff. And I haven't done that in probably, I'd say, 8 years, 7 years. And for some reason, it just popped into my head, oh, you used to feel joy in the bookstore, go there. So somewhere under all that buried sadness and grief, somewhere underneath all that, what I have buried, the joy was there still and reminded me where to go and what to do. So that's, taking control over your joy. It's really important we do that. Otherwise, we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves so deeply. And slowly we forget what joy feels like. So when we do that, we start living in survival mode. Something happy will happen. We'll be in a place where there's a lot of joy and we can't feel it. We can't experience it. It's buried. One of the things that used to give me so much pleasure was walking by the ocean. And last year, especially towards the end of the year and into the beginning of 2025, I would sometimes do that and go to some of my favorite places like the lighthouse I just described, and I couldn't feel them. I couldn't feel it. I would like stare at the ocean and look at this beautiful sky, and I'd be like, well, I know it's beautiful and I'm seeing it. And yes, it's beautiful, but it doesn't resonate with me. I'm not feeling it. And it was because I had allowed my joy to slip away. So think about where you lost your joy and go find it there. It's buried under something. It's just like that high heel that you haven't worn in a few months and you want to wear it to work today and it's buried under the closet stuff. Like your joy is in the closet buried somewhere. You got to find it. So that's why we lose joy. The joy is buried somewhere in there. We all have assignments, all right? And assignments, when I say that, I mean like our soul contracts, the things our soul came here to do. And sometimes those assignments are things that, we have to relive in order to release. But remember, healing is not reliving. Healing is releasing. There's a big difference. So if those memories come up or things come up, especially now with the energy that we're having, I have a great video on my YouTube channel, Mars and Scorpio, and I also just did a video about the Aries full moon. They're both on Zenkuda on YouTube. Give those a watch. Neither one of them are too long. Give those a watch because it will explain to you how a lot of things from the past are coming back now. We just had a South Node eclipse not too long ago, a couple weeks ago. That brought in a lot of, things up from the past. But the universe doesn't do that to traumatize us or make us relive them for no reason. The universe brings that up so that we release. We have to acknowledge something in order to release it. If this yellow buzzer thing was not on the table and I ignored it and I never saw it, I can't release it. I can't throw it into the other room and get rid of it. I have to realize it's making itself known. I have to realize it's here in order to release it. That's the energy of our trauma, our bad experiences, our grief. So one of the things that you can do when you want to do that emotional release is talking about it to someone. I suggested on the show a while back, just like finding someone you really trust and talking about, your experience and what happened to you, not so that they can fix it or do anything other than just hug you for a while and say, I'm sorry that happened to you. You can also give yourself a mantra saying, I don't need to carry this anymore. I don't need to carry this anymore. This isn't mine. One of the most transformative parts of my healing happened probably about 10 years ago. I woke up one morning and I realized I was completely reliving my mom's life, and I was completely reliving her karma, her assignments, and had taken them on and buried my own path on under that. And I had to do a lot of really deep healing work to get out from under because my joy was really buried. So, hey, Liz, how are you doing? I hope you're doing good. I am sorry I didn't call you back last week. I was traveling and then I was on a special project from work. Joanne is on also. Hey, Joanne. She says she finally turned on her computer so she can say hello. Her joy is seeing friends from the past she'd not seen in a long time and lessons from me. She's unable to leave a comment. So welcome, Joanne. I'm glad to see you on. So we've all got those things, right? We've all got those like things that we bury our grief under. The other thing you can do also is remember when you say to yourself, I'm done with this. I don't need to carry this anymore. Your soul knows what it came here to do. I do a lot of readings, a lot of this, a lot of that, and everyone always says, "Oh, I don't really know my path. I don't know what my soul came here for." The answer's in the silence. The answer's in sitting with yourself. Your soul does know. It may not have come up to the surface, your consciousness, but everyone has a soul space, and everyone's soul knows what it came here to do. And if you listen really, really closely, and you really, really go deep, it's right there. So ask yourself, am I done with this? Do I have a need to carry this? Because sometimes we're keeping it as a defense mechanism. We don't really want to know the truth, so we bury it in grief. Write down the emotional patterns you inherited. If you're suspecting that something isn't really your grief or your assignment, write down the patterns. One of my patterns, strangely enough, looking back now, it was so obvious, but couldn't see it for like 40 some odd years of my life. Whenever anything bad happened or I had shocking news or I had a bad day in general, my automatic is to go home, put my pajamas on and just get in bed and be sad. That not anymore, but that's what it used to be. And like laying in bed and wallowing in stuff, like was always my pattern. Like I wouldn't care if it was 2:00 in the afternoon. I was coming home, those PJs were going on, and I was in bed. And would go into like this place that was no good, wallow in it. Like all the Scorpio planets were coming out of me. And I realized when I woke up and understood that I was taking on my mother's assignment, my mom's karma, I was like, oh my God, I used to do this when I was a little kid. Since I'm 5 years old, I've been getting in bed whenever something happens. I get a splinter in my finger, I got to go to bed. So think about, where is your grief buried in and what are your emotional patterns? Because you inherited them most likely. And then when you kind of figure out what those are, then ask yourself, do these serve me now? It really didn't serve me to just go home and go to bed. A lot of things I could have been doing, and when I started not to do that and I started to take walks on the beach, I started to jog to the lighthouse, I started to walk around the lake by my house, I started to ride my bike or listen to beautiful music or write in my journal or all things I like to do. You guys probably have a million things. Maybe you want to go play pickleball or water ski or, climb a mountain. I don't know, but whatever it is, if it gives you joy, that would probably be a better emotional pattern to get into. And then a lot of times people will say, regarding if it's your pain or someone else's, what your joy is hidden under, the old adage, you can ask yourself, is this mine? Another personal story, I remember when I was going through my divorce, it was hellacious. And 2 years finally got my decree. And I had to go to a meeting of a large social club that my ex-husband was very prominent in because I was asking them for funding. I was doing a hospital project that my club was doing, and his club was like a sister club to my club. And so I had to go and do a little speech and get money for this project I was doing in a local children's ward. And I had to speak. And, when I walked in, I knew everyone there and they were all really nice to me and welcomed me with open arms. And I went up and I gave my speech and then I sat down because it was like a dinner. And I could see him from across the room. He kept looking over at me and looking over at me. And we really hadn't spoken at this point. The divorce was very fresh. And I just felt for the first time nothing. And I was like, wow, I'm in neutral. This is like the best thing that ever could have happened. I don't have hatred. I don't have love. I'm just neutral. And at the end of the evening, he came over and he hugged me because he's a bit of a covert narcissist, and my opinion, which I'm entitled to. And he hugged me and pretended like to be so loving and generous, and even though he wasn't for 2 years. And I'm not bitter, I'm just saying the truth. And so he mentioned something, and it was very, because I know him, it was very sarcastic. And it was meant to try and diminish me. And I literally felt this ball of energy well up inside me. And when it hit my heart, it popped out of my chest and just like went back to him, almost like I threw the energy back on him. And I turned around and I walked away and I got in my car and I drove home. And I realized that I had given him back everything that was no longer mine. Every guilt, every punishment, every, nastiness, every abandonment. I had thrown the energy all back on him. And that was the day that I really started to heal from that particular experience and that marriage. And it was a beautiful feeling because I literally was in neutral because the energy just came off me. And so that's a great visualization. If you have a situation like that where the energy really is weighing you down and masking your grief, visualize yourself taking it like a big ball of energy. We have the Zenkuda ball behind me, which I always say is the Z ball of light, right? Put it in a big ball and just throw it to them. And it's theirs now, not to harm them, not to wish them negative, just to give them back their own assignment, because it's not your assignment. It's their homework. It's their earth school work. And so now let's get back into more exercises about getting that joy back, because I gave you all where to find where it's buried and all that stuff. So you're going to take your joy back the way I did it anyway, was not in like big, grand, like big gestures, but in micro moments, like the dog's fur touching my leg, laying by the lighthouse and feeling the sun on me. I went out and bought a sketchbook, and I am by no means an artist. I'm like the stick person people, And I went out and bought a sketchbook and I started sketching with colored pencils. And I just, no one will ever see it really, probably. Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe I'll put them in a book one day. But that brought me joy because it was a way to express. So not in giant leaps, but just in micro movements, because joy is a muscle. It really is. It's a muscle that we have to flex. And if we haven't flexed it in a while, we forget how to be joyful. I know my producer, Bobby, likes to go to church once a week. And I love that. He is so faithful. And I know that he finds his joy there. God is joyful if we allow him into our hearts. So, start some kind of a ritual for joy, something that you do weekly that is your joy, something that you give yourself, and you're teaching yourself how to receive and allow joy and trust joy because you're creating it on a regular basis and you're flexing that muscle. It's like going to the gym, only you're going to the joy gym. And, step outside and just feel the sun, dance around the house for 3 minutes. If you have an Alexa, set her and say, Alexa, play dance music for 5 minutes or 3 minutes and just dance. When we move energy, we cannot be sad. Start a joy jar. I have a jar in my home, which was actually my mom's cookie jar. She loved it. It's hand-blown clear cookie jar, amber colored cookie jar with a cork top. And every time I go someplace special, I have a special dinner at a restaurant, or I have people over to my home for a dinner, I take the wine corks and I write the names of who the night and the date was with them. And I have a big jar filled with corks of beautiful, wonderful connections and times together. And sometimes when I'm sad, I spill it on the table and I look at all the corks and I remember all those times, and there's energy of joy in that. I even have a cork in there from the champagne bottle that was opened in the back of the limousine on my wedding day. And I leave it in there because that was a joyful moment. I can still feel that moment bubble up, that beautiful expansion of love and the people around me that day. It doesn't matter what happened after that. It's just I remember that day. There's corks in there from beautiful dinners that I had at my house, birthdays and celebrations and housewarmings and Christmases and, and just Saturday afternoons that were rainy, and it's just beautiful, beautiful times. So start that joy jar, put little messages in it or little notes, or maybe it's just a joy journal. That's a really cool thing to do. Every day, like think about what made you smile. You may need those memories someday. And when we do that, you're going to watch how heaven begins to build. For me, just talking about those things is making the energy in the studio feel lighter, so it's really cool. So I want to get back to like me, the story of me as the little girl who used to get in bed sad with her mom and that kind of thing. Those things are conditioning. And that's why I asked you guys to think about, you know, what your emotional patterns are when you feel sadness or you feel neglect or you feel negative emotions. What are your emotional patterns? Because those are your parental controls or whoever. I hate to say it, but our brains are formed as children, right? We're wired by the people who are our parental units. Not to blame anyone's parents, we're all got our soul contracts, we have our assignments. But the way we emotionally process things oftentimes is the parental programming. So ask yourself those emotional patterns that you have, a lot of times we default to them and we'll say things like, oh, this is just who I am. When I get upset, I do blankety blank. Well, is that really authentic to you? Is that really what you need? Is that serving you? Or is that just your default defense complex thing that you're running? So ask yourself in regards to those emotional patterns, is this my authentic script? Or is this script written by somebody else and I'm just in the story now? Because we're at a time now up until the end of this year and into the first half of 2026 where the stories are all getting rewritten, guys. It's like that old song, we're not going to take it. The stories are all getting rewritten. So we got to find our joy, and we have to write the way we find our joy based on our authentic soul space, not someone else's. And we also have to rewrite those emotional responses that we have to grief, to sadness, to loss, and make sure those scripts are our authentic emotional responses. Because we've been so surrounded by media and patriarchal society and parental ways that we grow up and conditioning, cultural, religious, every way, that we're taught how to handle our emotional patterns. And they may not be authentic. So ask yourself, is this my script? Your soul's assignment should feel light. It should feel expansive. The things that we do to emotionally process or handle loss should lead us to joy. It's the process of releasing things, processing them, just like we process our food and we take the nutrients out of it and then we let it go. We get rid of the waste, right? We eliminate, we release. That's the same thing with processing emotions. So make sure the way you're processing is yours and right for you, not something that someone else told you how to process something. Because if you're using someone else's script to process your emotions, that's probably why you feel stuck. You feel like you can't get out of, depression, sadness, neglect, hunger, detriment, deprivation, because you're not processing your emotional distresses, your grief, all those things. You're not processing the way that your soul came here to do it. So it's stuck. But when you listen to your soul in those moments of joy and you find that joy, then when you go to process those things, the soul is seeking joy. The soul is seeking the expansion of love. So through the process of those negative emotions, it will find that like a heat-seeking missile. It will find that. But if it's laying under layers and layers of conditioning, including how to process your emotions, it can't find it because your brain and your ego is battling that. So you'll know if you're in the right process if you find yourself feeling nurtured and healed during your sadness, during your grief. If you're starting to feel like, okay, I'm feeling this, but I know it's not forever. I'm feeling this, but it's not overwhelming. Then you know that your parental programming or the programming that you've been using to process your grief is better. You're getting better. But if you're feeling heavy and it feels overwhelming and you feel like this will never end, it's never going to get better, I don't know what to do, I'm really in a crisis situation here, I don't know what's wrong with me. If that's your inner dialogue, then you're processing based on someone else's script and you're stuck. So here are your questions to ask yourself. Is this mine? Is this assignment, this sadness, this grief, is this mine or is this somebody else's I've taken on? How can I stay in my joy so that I'm fully powerful to overcome this? What lights me up? What drains me? What lights me up? The walk on the beach, an ice cream cone, a certain TV show, seeing a certain person. You know, I have a friend of mine 8,000 miles away. As soon as I hear her voice, I light up. I have another friend who lives maybe a half hour away that we have the best conversations about spiritual stuff that she lights me up. What drains me? People who are aggressive, people who are aggressive for no reason. The constant droning of social media. Choose joy. Instead of going on social media, I have to call my friend, right? So it seems simple, but those are the little ways we flex the joy muscle. And then affirm, I'm allowed to choose joy over duty, over what someone else told me I had to be, over what someone else told me was the correct way to process things. You know, there's this old cliche that everyone talks about that says, everyone processes grief differently. Do they even know what they're talking about? Do they know what that means? Yes, that's true. But this is why. Because we're all processing differently, because we're looking for the way that our soul wants to process. And we're not getting there because we're trying to process through everything that we were taught instead of what we're really feeling. I was taught to go to bed, pull the covers up over your head, pretend it didn't really happen. You ain't never releasing anything that way. You're not ever getting over anything that way. So, in closing, ask yourself, what's your heaven? What is it? Write it down. Tell me about it. You can DM me, you can email me direct. What's your heaven? You know, where's your peace? Remember, I said peace is intentional. I said that on the last show. But whatever it is, I guarantee you, your heaven is waiting for you. Your joy is waiting for you. We have just buried it under a lot of stuff. And it's time for us to know that it's waiting for us. We don't have to earn it. We just have to remember what it feels like. We just have to remember. Do that little exercise tomorrow morning when you wake up. Close your eyes. When was the last time you felt joy, or when was the most joy you felt? You just have to remember it. So thank you for listening. Thank you for getting this far and tuning in. Please share the show if you think it'll resonate with someone. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Zenkuda. My social media, Zenkuda Soul Space, Zenkuda Official on Instagram. And also, if you want to dig deeper into your soul space and get some clarity, please book a reading at zenkuda.com. I will be back here in the soul space very soon. And remember, joy is your birthright. Let's feel it together. Bye-bye, guys.